Good morning, everybody. So this morning, I wanted to talk about three topics which are really timely at the moment, given what's going on in our practice and the type of stuff we're working on. First one is the question of whether you're buying a business or buying a job. There's a lot of businesses for sale out there where if you get your accountant to really analyze the financials and really understand the nature of who does what in that business that is for sale, you really are buying yourself a job as opposed to a business. So I'll break down further what I mean by that. If you've got a business which looks great on the books and it's earning EBITDA, so earnings before tax, interest, depreciation amortization, which is a fancy word for what you take home pre-tax. If it's got an EBITDA of say 200,000, and if it's for sale for 600,000, which is the exact EBITDA on and sale price of a management rights hotel business that we've just been doing due diligence in conjunction with our accountant friends on, that may look like quite a good little business, and it is. Don't get me wrong, that is a good little business. Anything that earns 200K a year. But if, as part of that $200,000 a year, you're doing the job of three people and putting up with an inordinate amount of stress for the performance of the business, is that 200,000 a year profit, or is, for example, the market rate salary for someone to manage that business 100,000 a year, which means the earnings are only, once you take out the pay of the person running that business, is only $100,000 a year business. So theoretically, you may have grossly overpaid for that business, but it's not as simple as that. Also, as well as the fact that you may be just buying yourself a job, that person that was running that business, in the case of say this management rights business, which I was just talking to you about, may actually have connections and skills that you do not. They may have a type of personality that you do not. They may have, there may be other particular peculiarities about the situation whereby their experience and skill have led them to craft a really good little lifestyle for them, depending on their circumstances, out of that business. For example, if you've got young kids, you're married, and have had a relatively 9-to-5 existence prior to taking over a business like that, are you happy, and is your spouse happy, and is the family in general happy with the fact that your 9-to-5 existence is largely gone, and that is really more of a 24/7, sounds a bit extreme, but a full-on commitment whereby you've really got everything on your mind the whole time? Because if it is, and if the actual remuneration for that person, i.e. you doing that job, is half of what, say, the EBITDA on the books looks like, then arguably that changes I'm not saying don't buy those businesses. We're never scaremonger or over lawyer, but we like to make sure our clients make informed decisions. So they are going into these businesses with their eyes wide open and they understand the real nature of what they are buying. Second thing I wanted to talk to you about today was how to spot a quality franchise or franchisor. There are franchisors and there are franchisors. A franchise which takes a lot of upfront fees, offers precious little by way of training and support, and really is interested in just taking as much from you without in return giving back in terms of, like I said, support, advertising, and just a general desire to make the pie bigger for everybody, including you as a franchisee, is the type of franchisor you want to get in bed with. The easiest way to vet a franchisor is ask their other franchisees what they think about them. The same way that the best way to ask someone what a partner, a romantic partner, if you will, is really like, is to ask their don't ask their ex, but ask their partner what they're like, and they'll tell you, or their employer or their colleagues at work, as opposed to someone you sit in the bar with, because they'll give you a much more raw, real appreciation when money and services are changing hands. They'll give you a much more raw appreciation of what that party is like. Of course, take sometimes the franchisees' comments with a grain of salt, because they may be biased the other way. They may think, the world owes them everything and the franchisor doesn't do enough, and they take that 8%, et cetera, et cetera. Ultimately, though, you've got to use your judgment. That's why you're going to make sure you ask good performers as well as medium or poorer performers what they think of the franchisor. But again, as with the situation whether you are buying a job or a business, make sure you do your homework, go and ask these questions, that you'll get more out of speaking to franchisees than you will out of anything your lawyer will tell you about the contractual obligations in the franchise agreement, the lease, or any other ancillary contractual documentation. Those real world kind of questions, those real world considerations, they're probably worth more to you than anything we can do in the books, as depressing as that sounds. The last thing I want to speak about this morning, and I'm trying to keep this video nice and quick so I can get on with our busy day that we have here. Intellectual property, assignment of intellectual property on settlement. The Auckland District Law Society Sale and Purchase Agreement, which a lot of businesses are sold pursuant to, has a clause in there whereby the vendor is obligated to assign or enter into necessary documentation to assign the intellectual property associated with a business. What is intellectual property? In simple terms, the name and branding of a business and any other intangible asset which can be captured and has value to the business. That's a really simple terminology for it. It's all I'm going to, as far as I'm going to go for the purposes of the point I'm making here. But what you need to do is on settlement, and this often we see lawyers don't turn their mind to this, that we're dealing with on the other side, but for both vendor and purchaser. Doesn't matter so much for vendor, but it's a bit of a dropping of the ball if you're acting for a purchaser, is you want to make sure that there's an actual deed of assignment entered into, which clearly sets out that the vendor and purchaser agree that all of the intellectual property used in connection with that business is assigned to the purchaser. On settlement, you need to make sure that any trademarks, there's an assignment completed through the IPON's office, and just generally, and before you do all that, you want to make sure you identify all of the intellectual property that exists in relation to a business. While the Auckland District Law Society general terms captures broadly all of that intellectual property, you would have a challenge if it turned out there was intellectual property of reasonable magnitude that hadn't been clearly identified and earmarked and assigned in a deed of assignment per se. You may later have a problem if you're trying to enforce a proprietary claim, i.e. assert ownership in that IP. So make sure it all gets dealt with by your lawyer, it all gets added to the agreement and is assigned on settlement. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Have a fabulous day.